Welcome all to Bravo 22 Live. Welcome to all the Bravo 22 members, the wider community of the Royal British Legion and Poppy Scotland. Big shouts out today to both Dean and Baz for their wonderful mass that they created after last week's workshop. For all new visitors, I'm Tip Cullen, a Bravo 22 member, an actor and a former Royal Marines commando. Today we bring you our third and final workshop of our Romeo and Juliet play, which have been incredible. So the story progresses. For those of you that missed parts 1 and 2, don't worry about it. You can get them on YouTube, and after today, when we complete today's workshop, that will be there too, so you can watch at any time. Obviously, if you want to see me, don't worry about it. But let's go on. So where are we at? Today, right, so far, with the deaths of Tybalt and Mercutio, the hope that the marriage of Romeo and Juliet will actually sort of reconcile the two battling families has been put paid to. It ain't going to happen. And now Romeo is being banished from Verona. So where are we at? And who are we going to welcome to do that for us? It is our very own, because she is very much part of Bravo 22. Let's welcome our very own legend, Kate Beales. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Tip. Hello, how lovely to see you. Yeah, the story continues. I don't know if anyone who watched the first session remembers that we talked about how this is a story that is much about hate, but more about love. And of course, when Juliet hears this terrible news that Romeo, her love, who she's just married, has murdered Tybalt, her cousin, a member of her family, this sense of the conflict in the middle of the story, the conflict at the very heart of Romeo and Juliet, really rises inside her. So I thought we should just think about that for a moment. And I'm going to ask Tip to help me out here. Tip, can you show me a story that's much about hate, first of all? Show me hate.
I'm going to kill you.
But more about love. Show me love.
I am sort of criminal-minded, but I like you a lot.
Thank you. And when Juliet thinks about love and hate in Romeo, she says all kinds of things. She says he's a serpent heart hid by a flowering face. She says he's a fiend angelical. And she also says he is an honourable villain. So, Tip, can you show me both honourable and then after that, a villain?
I tried it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. An honourable villain. It's complicated. It's confusing. It's really hard to play all this. Juliet is devastated. Of course, she does have the help of the nurse, her nurse, and also Friar Lawrence. Romeo, in the first instance, has fled to Friar Lawrence's cell. And between him and the nurse, they find a way to get Romeo and Juliet together just for one night before Romeo has to flee from Verona. And he goes to a city called Mantua, a little bit away from Verona. And there he has to wait. Juliet, meanwhile, is devastated. She's lost her cousin. She's lost her husband, the love of her life. And now she has to face her family. Lady Capulet, so enraged at the death of Tybalt, is plotting to kill Romeo. And Lord Capulet is worried that Juliet seems so upset, but he has a solution. His idea is to bring forward Juliet's potential marriage to Paris. He agrees that Juliet will marry Paris in 3 days' time. And of course, when Juliet hears the news, she throws herself at his feet and begs him to reconsider.
God's bread, it makes me mad. Day, night, hour, tide, time, work, play, alone, in company. Still my care had been to have her matched. And having now provided a gentleman of noble parentage, of fair demesne, youthful and nobly trained, stuffed, as they say, with honourable parts, proportioned as one would wish a man, and then to have some wretched, pooling fool, a whining mammet in her fortune's tender, to answer, I cannot wed, I do not love, I am too young, I pray you, pardon me. But an you will not wed, I'll pardon you. Graze where you will, you shall not house with me. Look to it, think on't, I do not use to jest. Thursday is near. Lay hand on heart, advise. And you be mine, I give you to my friend. And you be not. Hang, beg, starve, die in the streets, for by my soul, I'll ne'er forgive you, nor what is mine shall ever do you good. Trust to it, bethink you, I'll not be forsworn.
Wow, thank you, Tip. Oh, some of the most chilling lines, I think, in the whole play and in Shakespeare. This brutal, brutal reaction from Juliet's father when she tries to go against his wishes. Language more fitted for the beginning of the play when we saw Capulets against Montagues, now being used by Lord Capulet against his own daughter. Thank you, Tip. That was an extraordinary reading of Lord Capulet's lines. Absolutely brilliant. And we can see that Juliet can hope for nothing from her father except obedience. So, who else can she turn to? She turns to her mother and begs Lady Capulet to say something, but Lady Capulet says, "Speak not to me, I'll not say a word. Do what you will, for I am done with thee." And that leaves only the nurse who, of course, knows what has happened. The nurse knows that Romeo and Juliet are married already, but she says, "I think it best you marry with the Count. He's a lovely man. Romeo's a dish clerk compared to him. And anyway, Romeo's dead, or as good as dead. You're never going to see him again. Yes, marry Paris." And Juliet can't believe what she's hearing. She says, "Thank you, nurse. You have comforted me marvelously well. Leave me now." So she's alone. All the adults in her life not supporting her, all failing her. She has one last person she can turn to, Friar Lawrence. And so she tells her family that she's going to go to confession. She's going to confess for having been so offensive to her father. She's going to pray for forgiveness. And of course, they let her go. And she arrives at Friar Lawrence's cell. And she says to Friar Lawrence, "Oh, bid me leap rather than marry Paris from off the battlements of any tower." She'd rather kill herself than end up marrying Paris now. And Friar Lawrence completely understands. And he understands that he must do something, that he's as embroiled in this as the rest of them. And so he says, "Holben, be merry. Give consent to marry Paris." And remember, Friar Lawrence, we talked about this in the first session. Friar Lawrence is a bit of a herbalist. And he goes and he produces a little pot of medicine. And he says, "Tomorrow night, this distilling liquor drink thou off." And his plan is that Juliet will drink a potion that he has. And this potion is so powerful, it's a sleeping drug, and it will make her sleep so deeply that she has no pulse, no heartbeat, no sign at all of being awake. Then her family will assume that she's dead, and they will take her to the vault underneath the church, which is where all the Capulets who've died are laid. They're not buried in the ground, they're just laid under the church. And Juliet will sleep there. And meanwhile, Friar Lawrence will get a message to Romeo. Romeo can come back in the middle of the night. He can get Juliet, when she wakes up, out of the vault. They can hide together. And then Friar Lawrence can bring them back out into the public. And what he's hoping is that all the families will be so relieved that Juliet's not really dead, that they will forgive them. That, at least, is the hope. And so Juliet goes home with the potion and has to decide whether to drink it on the night before her wedding. I'm going to stop there for a second, and I'm just going to check in with Tip in case there are any questions.
They're racking up, they are indeed. First of all, I'll do the big shout outs. Shout outs to Dean, Ray, Sandra and Carol. And good morning from Luke, Matt, Sally Ann, Graham and Shirley, all watching. Have got one quizzy for you. Obviously, there's a lot of chuck-ups about my wonderful monologue. But quizzy, which is a really good one, is where would the friar get the poison from?
Ah, great question. It's all herbal remedies that he's collected. So it's all things that he would have just gathered out on his collections in the mornings. At the beginning of the story, we see him out in the very early morning gathering herbs. And people think that it's probably belladonna or deadly nightshade that he uses, but it doesn't say in the play the name of the plant.
Wonderful. That's it. Let's carry on with the story.
So Juliet, the night before her wedding, alone in her bedroom, she sent away the nurse, she sent away her mother, who were all fussing around wedding dresses as if nothing has happened. And Juliet looks at the potion and she's terrified because she thinks, what if it isn't a sleeping drug? What if it's a poison, which the friar subtly hath ministered to have me dead, lest in this marriage he should be dishonoured because he married me before to Romeo? What if Friar Lawrence is plotting against her too? Or what if it kills her? Or what if she wakes up before Romeo comes and lies in the vault where no healthsome air breathes in and dies strangled or stifled before Romeo can get there? And if she does wake, what's she going to find in there? The ghosts of all her buried ancestors. Tybalt, yet but green in earth, festering in his shroud. And what is Tybalt? What is the ghost of Tybalt going to say to Juliet, who is waiting for Tybalt's murderer? And yet, what else can she do? She waits almost until dawn. And then she takes the potion and she decides that she is going to drink it. And I'm just going to tell you what she said. I'm going to ask everyone just to imagine for a second what it's going to be like to drink this thing. What's it going to do to the body? Is it going to taste? Is it going to smell? I don't know. Is it going to harm as it goes through the body? Or is it just something that's going to feel like a lovely, drowsy, peaceful sleep? Juliet doesn't know. She doesn't even know if it's going to kill her. I'm going to ask Tip and anyone else who wants to just say Juliet's lines as she drinks the potion. I see Tip's ready with a bottle there. And Juliet says, Romeo, 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 here's drink. I drink to thee. I'm going to ask Tip to perform Juliet's lines for us. With anyone else out there who feels like doing it?
Romeo, 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 here's drink. I drink to thee.
Thank you. And in the morning, when the Capulet family come to take Juliet to the church for her wedding, they find what they believe is a corpse. And instead of a wedding, there's a funeral. Instead of a wedding procession to the church, there is a funeral procession. Instead of celebration, there is mourning. And Juliet's body is laid to rest underneath the church in the darkness, and the family goes home to grieve. Meanwhile, Friar Lawrence has been busy. He's written a letter to Romeo, of course, to tell Romeo what is happening. And he's given the letter to one of the friars in his order, Friar John, who is on his way to Mantua. But Friar John stopped over on the way in another town on the way to Mantua, and that town had plague. And so by the time Friar John gets to Mantua, the city gates are locked, and anybody who has come from anywhere where the plague was is not permitted to enter. So Friar John comes back to Verona and says, I'm really sorry, but I couldn't deliver the letter. And Friar Lawrence says, wait, what? Well, what have you done with it? Did you give it to someone else? And Friar John says, no, look, I've still got it. Here you are, have it back. Friar Lawrence is terrified. He can start to see the plan unravel around him. And he knows he's going to have to go back into the vault to get Juliet out. Meanwhile, Romeo, of course, is waiting in Mantua for news. He's told his servant Balthazar the truth about his marriage, because Balthazar can go back and forth freely between Romeo and Juliet. So when Balthazar arrives, Romeo says, how are things in Verona? Tell me, how is my lady? How is Juliet? What news of her? Is she well? And Balthazar says, Juliet sleeps in the Capulet's monument. She is not well. She is dead. And Romeo can't believe this news. And he says, well, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight. and he resolves to go back to Verona to see her one last time, but he knows he can't live without her. So before he leaves Mantua, he goes searching for somebody who can help him. And he knows that in the city there is an apothecary. Now that's like a chemist, someone who deals in drugs, basically. And he knows that the apothecary has poison that is so deadly that it can be administered instantly. And so he goes to find the apothecary, and the apothecary says, I can't sell you this. There's a death penalty for selling this in Mantua. And Romeo says, yes, but I have money, and money is more powerful than death. And so the apothecary sells him the poison. Romeo makes his way back to Verona, and he finds his way into the Capulet's vault. But when he gets in there, he's not alone in there. Paris has come too. Paris, who should have married Juliet, has come to strew flowers on her grave. And when he sees Romeo, he assumes that Romeo, who's a Montague, must have come to do some kind of injury to the grave, to desecrate the Capulet monument. And so he immediately draws his sword. But Romeo is a desperate man. He says, don't fight me, Paris. I don't care whether I live or die. And in seconds, he has killed Paris. And there he is at Juliet's side. He takes one last look at her. And he says, her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence full of light. And there in the darkness, he takes the poison. He takes the poison and he dies. And of course, pretty much immediately after he has died, Friar Lawrence comes running down into the vault, trying to wake Juliet. And Juliet slowly is coming back to life. And she wakes up and she says, oh, Friar, you're here exactly as I hoped. I'm awake exactly as you said. Where is Romeo? Where is my lord? And Friar Lawrence says, lady, everything has gone wrong. We can't stay here. You have to come with me. But Juliet says, but where? Where is Romeo? Where's my husband? And she looks past Friar Lawrence, and in the candlelight, she sees the body of Romeo. And Friar Lawrence says, please, you have to come with me. We have to leave, because now the alarm has been sounded. Paris's servant is out there. Balthazar is out there. People have heard voices. People are running towards the vault to see what's wrong. And Juliet says, I will not leave. I'm staying here with Romeo. Friar Lawrence throws up his hands and says, I have to leave. I dare no longer stay. He turns and he runs, leaving Juliet alone with the body of Romeo. And Juliet looks at Romeo's body and says, what is this? And she finds the tiny vial of poison and says, what's this I see? Poison, I see, has been the timeless end. And then she tries to drink some too to go with him. And she says, what? Oh, churl, none left, not a drop to help me go with him? I'll kiss his lips. Perhaps some poison will still hang upon his lips. There's no poison on his lips, but she says, his lips are still warm. And at that moment, she hears the sound of footsteps, people shouting, people running down into the vault, the flickering of light. And she knows that she's got to do something urgently. And as she's looking around, she sees that Romeo carries a dagger. She snatches the dagger, says, oh, happy dagger, rust here in her heart, and let me die. And as the prince and the Capulets and the Montagues burst into the vault with lights to see what's happened, they find the body of Juliet with the body of Romeo, the body of Paris. And the prince says, Capulets and Montagues, we are done now. I too have lost a brace of kinsmen. You have lost your hopes. You have lost your daughter Capulet. You have lost your son, Montague. There's nothing left to do. The peace must be kept. The feud must now be over. For there never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and Romeo. And that is where the story ends.
Whoa! Love that. That's incredible. The quizzes are coming in. Absolute wonderful story. Thank you so much for that, Kate. But we still have a few quizzes to answer, which is brilliant, and it does lean into what you just finished off with. Absolutely unbelievable story. I'm just completely drawn into it. Few quizzes though. connected with Friar Lawrence, why does the friar help Juliet? And because of his assistance or his neglect in a way, or his failure, will he get punished for it?
That is such a great question. Friar Lawrence is trying to do what he believes is the right thing, uniting the two families. So although he's working by stealth, and you could argue he makes terrible choices, what he's hoping to do is to bring the Montagues and the Capulets together. Great question about what's going to happen. There's a big question in this, really, which is who is responsible? 5 young people have died. The kind of cream of the generation in Verona, the young, have all died. Paris, Romeo, Juliet, Tybalt and Mercutio. But who's responsible? Where does that start? I'm curious to know. What do you think, Tip?
I think he's guilty. No. But in a way, it's because he has helped, and it's pure. It's that moral compass you have. You know what I mean? You're like going, so where does it lie? And he's obviously just trying to help 2 young lovers out and trying to stop battles. So in a way, it could be faith, it could be whatever, but he's trying to do the moral sort of correct thing. And it obviously, because we are human beings, it hasn't worked.
Yeah. One of Shakespeare's sources is a poem by somebody called Arthur Brooke, which was written, I think, in 1652. And it's called The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet. And in that story, Shakespeare borrows quite a lot, and it's quite similar. But in that story, at the end, the nurse is banished. Friar Lawrence has to leave Verona and goes and lives in a remote hermitage for the rest of his life. And the apothecary who sold Romeo the poison is hanged.
Oof.
Yeah. So the blame stops at the apothecary in that story.
Well, again, they're obviously to blame for quite a lot of things then, and still are maybe in a way. But there is a quiz on the character of Paris. A lot of lovers in Shakespeare tales are named Paris. You've got Romeo and Juliet, apparently in Troy. Is that character in any of the other plays? Do you know?
I'm not aware of another Paris in Shakespeare, but you're right, it's a classical name, isn't it? So I guess what it's suggesting is that he is a kind of heroic classical figure. He's not that real in the story. He is more of a kind of archetype, but a very impressive archetype.
Yeah, a bit cavalier, isn't he, I suppose, in that way. And one, obviously, question from Matt Whiteman, who, in brackets, apart from the tipster, are your favourite contemporary Shakespearean actors, male and female? Also, where can we find their work online? Which I know we have sort of like links, but who's your favourite contemporary actors?
Well, I mean, obviously, Tip. That is a great question. I am in awe of, he's quite an elderly Shakespearean actor now, but when I was 15, I saw Michael Pennington play Hamlet. And that's what changed everything for me. It was the first time I'd been to the Royal Shakespeare Company. And it was the first time I'd seen a Shakespeare play. And seeing that made me want to go into the theatre. So Michael Pennington, first off. And since then, gosh, it's such a good question. And there's so many people. I'm going to single out a particular person who isn't the most obvious and isn't the most famous necessarily, but she's an extraordinary actress, and her name is Anne Ogbomo. And I've seen her play Shakespeare with such force and power. I've seen her play male roles in Shakespeare, and she is astonishing. So I'm going to single her out as my favourite female.
Brilliant. I think I've seen her. She's performed at the Globe as well, I think. So, I think I've seen her, like, incredible, really powerful and strong. There's obviously Matt Whiteman's got a thing about dogs. He's a very passionate dog owner. And he said, was Shakespeare's dog called Yorick?
But you know what? That's a brilliant, I have no idea. That's a great question. I do not know if Shakespeare had a dog called Yorick. And I'm going to go and look that up now because I'm so curious. What I do know is that one of the classic Shakespearean dog names, which pops up in King Lear, is Tray.
What, Tray?
Yeah, Tray.
What, short for Tracy?
Could be.
Big chuck-ups. Ian Rudge says this is better than a book. He's obviously really enjoyed the workshops as such. Final one from David Hall. It's more of a statement. He says, although it's a tragedy, he says it's also a happy ending because the families do become reunited. And I suppose is that I mean, this from me really, is that the positivity? Is that like the Shakespeare endings, like a bit of a jig, like a bit of a hurrah, you know what I mean, a positive ending?
That's such an interesting one, and you could talk a lot about that in all Shakespeare's plays. I think the endings of a lot of Shakespeare's plays are really ambiguous, and I think this one is, yes, you're right, it's positive because it kind of puts an end to everything once and for all. And what I didn't tell you is that the last thing the Montagues and Capulets agreed to do is to raise monuments in gold to Romeo and to Juliet. So I have seen some readings of the story that say they're still obsessed with material things, with money. They still haven't quite learnt their lesson because they're still going, no, I'm going to put up a bigger statue. No, I'll put up a big statue. So it's still all about who's the most powerful household in the city. Or you could read it like that. Or you could say, yeah, they've learnt their lesson and it's done. Shakespeare leaves it open for us.
But again, that exactly what you said there, Shakespeare, his stories and tales are so contemporary. You know what I mean? All those, you know, what do you value, the moral compasses, everything. It's they relate to and resonate in today's society, especially in current climate and current times as such. So I'd like to sort of do a final thank you. So in fact, Shirley asked the last one here. What do we know about Shakespeare's own love life?
That's great. That is not a great one for me. I know some things about his love life, but there's actually all kinds of brilliant stuff written about him. I mean, he was famously married, but never around at home, and I believe not the best of partners to his husband, from what I hear. More than that, I'd be really curious for people to go off and find out more. There are lots of stories written about Shakespeare and his family life and how he was a touring actor. He was a traveling minstrel. You know, he was off on the road for long periods of time, which doesn't necessarily make for the easiest of family relationships.
And strangely enough, that resonates with today's industry and being an actor or a playwright or whatever else. You've got to travel, you've got to be, you know, working in different groups and different people all the time. So really to have partners in the industry, it's again, it's a challenge in itself. So I think that's for everybody to take that one on board as well, really.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you very much. I'd like to say it's been an incredible 3 workshops with you, Kate. I've really, really enjoyed it. Every time you've been telling the story, I've been drawn right into it. And it's been wonderful. And I hope for everyone in the Bravo 22 members and a wider audience, they've enjoyed it too. And I'm sure they have as such. So for all of us, can we give Kate a massive big round of applause? Woohoo! Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for all your enthusiasm and your support. It's been an absolute delight. I'm so glad I've had a chance to be out here with you all.
No, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. So final few bits and pieces, a bit of admin points then for the rest of the gang. Next creative workshop as such for the possible theatrical or whatever that sort of slant will be next Tuesday at 11 o'clock. However, this Thursday, we have our second art workshop. Again, with Al Johnson, this time they'll be covering drawing, people in proportion. So more of a technical thing. You probably need paper and pencils for that one, and that'll be cracking. So that is me. I am Tip Cullen. This is us, our Romeo and Juliet workshops coming to an end. It's been an absolute joy, and just enjoy it and stay safe. Thank you so much. I'll catch all you guys soon. See you later.